Story 1. Don't take criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from. I have slept much better since following this advice. Story 2. The first job I had was at a small production facility for Windows. As a 15-year-old, I did easy tasks like sweeping floors, cleaning, and light assembly. I was sweeping the floor for sawdust and didn't put much effort into it when an older man approached me and said, "I will tell you something you will remember for the rest of your life. No matter how mundane the job is, do it properly." I remembered and never forgot those words. It was a valuable lesson. Story 3. The key to anger management is noticing and defusing your anger when it is at a 5, 6, or 7 out of 10. If you wait until you are at your highest level of anger to calm down, you will need a miracle to make it happen. Story 4. There was a woman who complained to her grandmother about her husband, who always made a mess and left his socks on the floor. The grandmother, who had already lost her husband, said, "One day those socks won't be there." This statement completely shifted the woman's perspective. I like to reflect on this when I get annoyed by small things my partner does, and instead, I feel grateful that he is here. Story 5. My dad taught me to add someone to my car insurance if they will be driving my car, even temporarily. A friend totaled my car, but I didn't have to pay anything. If she had not been added, it would have taken me years to recover. Story 6. Old Mexican Granny. Do you think our ancestors were just wandering through the jungle and came across a fully built pyramid? No. Our ancestors found a nice piece of flat land, and through years of hard work, they built something amazing together. That's what a good relationship is. It's a solid foundation and years of hard work. Not sure of the source or where I heard it, but I've always loved this quote. Story 7. Say thank you, not sorry. In many situations, saying thank you achieves two things. Thank you for waiting. Instead of, sorry I was late, the other person feels appreciated. They had to wait. You appear responsible. You likely had a good reason for being late. Story 8. Shortly before her death, my grandmother said, "You have such a kind heart, but I fear your loyalties lie where they aren't deserved. Be careful whom you let receive the man that you are." It reverberates in the back of my mind constantly and has often proven true. This advice, though personal, is among the most valuable I have ever received. It has made me consciously skeptical of those around me for good reason. Story 9. My father passed away. The head of music at my university embraced me and said, "My dear boy, there will be much more of that." At first, I was taken aback, but then I adjusted to his words. Additionally, he reminded me of Gandalf. Story 10. To achieve what you have never attained, you must take actions you have never taken. In other words, nothing changes if nothing changes. Story 11. Nobody gave me this advice. I came up with it on my own after my divorce. When it comes to your wife, don't give her what she wants. Give her what she needs. And for those who stray, a ring does not cover a hole. Story 12. It's hard to understand mentally, but honestly, if you want to do something, you need to just do it. I feel like Shia LaBeouf. I don't know how to convey the mental feeling of what I'm saying, other than by example. I am good at consistently working out. The hardest part is starting. But once I do that, I will keep doing it. Just do it. Story 13. I tell my kids all the time that if they don't ask, the answer is a guaranteed no. So it doesn't hurt to ask. This applies to many facets of life. Story 14. Never talk to the police. I wish I had received that advice as a teenager. So, kids, it may sound unethical, but do not speak to the police. They do not care if you are guilty or innocent. They are focused on making arrests. Just request a lawyer and remain silent. No matter how minor the situation is, get a lawyer. For something slightly more universal and less ethically questionable, the cheapest version and the most expensive version of an item are often both poor choices. Do your research and find the best option within your budget, especially for anything that separates you from the ground, such as a mattress, shoes, tires, etc. Story 15. When I thought my life was stuck and not getting better, someone asked me if I would go back to my life before if given the chance. In my situation now, I am much better, and I would never wish to look back at my life then. Story 16, you have to value your own time. This was advice from my business owner father when I started my own business. Story 17, if you know you didn't do it, don't freak out when accused. I don't follow it half the time, but it's good advice. Story 18, the best advice I ever heard came from a rap song. Money doesn't change you, it just magnifies. If you have a vice, it's just maximized. Story 19, think before you speak. Do not say everything that comes to your mind. When beginning a long task, such as postgraduate training or certification, you might think, I'll be 29, 36, or 45 years old by the time I'm done. The advice is, you're going to be 29, 36, or 45 anyway. Story 20. My favorite uncle said that you'll be surprised by what you are capable of doing when you don't have a choice. When I found out that my girlfriend was pregnant at 18, I was scared and worried. He also mentioned that having children is very difficult but also fun and rewarding. The key is to try your best to put them first. He was right on all counts. After 27 years of marriage, both of our children are grown and pursuing their own paths. Story 21. Be the change you want to see in life. This phrase, attributed to a wise individual, resonated with me. Additionally, the meaning of the phrase there, but for the grace of God, go is significant when encountering someone less fortunate than yourself. Story 22. When I first became a father, some told me, the days are long, but the years are short. I had no idea what it meant at the time, but I understand it now. Story 23. From a friend who watched his father, who loved to fish, slowly succumb to dementia. He advised to get outside every day you can because you never know when you might not be able to anymore. You don't want to reflect on the days it rained and you stayed in. This advice applies to much more than just fishing. Story 24. Don't spend your time and money on someone else's partner. Find the right one and commit to her. If she is not the one, let go and move on. Story 25. One thing that has stuck with me is my father telling me not to be dependent on a woman. This sounds misogynistic, but what he meant was to learn how to cook, clean, and perform other household tasks that, in his time, were considered women's work. Learning these skills as a teenager helped me become independent and capable of living alone for a few years before I met my wife. I observed some men, my father's age or even my age, and wonder how long they would survive without a partner to handle household responsibilities for them. Story 26. The only thing I can think of at the moment is when T.I. said, let go and let God deal with it. Before you downvote me for mentioning his name, what this means to me is that regardless of whether you believe in God or any higher power, you need to let go of things or people and allow situations to work themselves out. You do you. Story 27. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. This quote, attributed to Robin Williams, holds a profound truth. The advice is to focus on yourself and refrain from judging others for their actions or choices. Story 28. No one ever said on their deathbed that they wished they had spent more time at the office. My dad told me, after his retirement, that my stressful, fast-paced job was affecting my health and young family. Soon after, I found a new job and recalibrated my priorities. Story 29. If you can determine where you want to retire, purchase a house there now. Do not wait until you retire. I was in Dallas and had been wanting to return to San Diego. In 1995, I bought a house there before I even had a job. I am glad I did because I would not be able to afford that house if I tried to buy it today. Story 30. Doc. A large metal pole was flying straight towards my head at high speed. Without that timely advice, I would be dead, so I think that would be it for me. Story 31. One person once told me, Mij Wijbane a Bedzi ci Dane, which is a Polish saying that roughly translates to don't care, and you'll get what you want. It was probably the wisest thing I have ever heard in my life. Story 32. It's all mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. A very anxious and worried parent. Story 33. My dad always says, in the end, things will be good. If things are not good right now, then it is simply not the end. It helps me remember that things can change and get better, even when everything feels bad and pointless. Story 34. Always buy the best you can afford, and you will always be happy. If you can afford a $120,000 car, buy it. If you can only afford a $2,000 car, buy that one. If you think it is expensive to hire a professional, just wait until you hire an amateur. Happiness, real and genuine happiness, is not a product of money or people. It only comes from within. You are the only person who can truly and genuinely bring yourself happiness. You just have to want it badly enough to not let anything stand in your way. It is okay to forgive people. You do not have to forget, though. One piece of advice from my father. There are 3 things in life that, as a man, you should never mess with: another man's money, another man's woman, and another man's tools. These are off limits. Story 35. Poop washes off. I know it seems obvious, but remembering these words has helped me through some difficult moments. Story 36. When starting something new that makes you nervous, such as a job, always remember that this is the worst you will ever be at it. Learning may be slow, you will make mistakes, and things may go wrong, but afterward, you will be better than before. Story 37. While section hiking on the Appalachian Trail, I met a man who shared 2 pieces of wisdom as we stood atop an overlook. First, all advice sounds significantly wiser when it is given atop a mountain. Second, turn left at the next crossing and get pizza at the spot just a quarter-mile ahead. He demonstrated his first point with his second. That was some amazing pizza. Story 38. Keep your ear to the ground, and you will hear some things. This advice comes from a man who has been with the company for 27 years. He has helped me a lot in understanding how the company operates and in learning how to stay out of trouble. Story 39. 2 pieces of advice from Reddit users. The harder talks you are ready to have, the happier your life will be. Whatever gets tracked gets done, such as tracking daily steps, calories, or repetitions during workouts. Story 40. If something you do negatively impacts your finances, health, or relationships, you need to step back and take a serious look at that situation. This is the best advice I did not listen to until it was almost too late. Story 41. Hire professionals and get out of the way. This approach works effectively in my professional life and in most areas of my personal life, although there are some things I won't outsource. Professionally, it means finding good people to work with. They may be a bit more expensive to employ, but it makes life so much easier. Once you have staff, the next step is to enable them rather than manage them. Lay some groundwork, then step back and trust them. Personally, it means hiring a cleaner, lawn care service, plumber, and similar professionals. Don't try to tackle tasks that you can realistically have a professional handle, especially if they are not part of your core skill set. This frees up a lot of time and energy, making me a better partner, friend, and community member. Story 42. If you cannot do anything about it, then why worry? If you can do something about it, then why worry? Story 43. A bottle of water costs $1 at a grocery store, $3 at a convenience store, and $6 at an airport. It is the same bottle of water. If you are questioning your value, you may be in the wrong place. Story 44. When we were both frustrated by my failure to grasp some key concepts, a high school algebra teacher told me, "Most things that are worth doing will not be easy for you." Story 45. Respect your time or it will not respect you. When I was a teenager, staying up too late affected my grades. I owe my mom for that. Story 46. There are 2 kinds of problems in this world. The first kind has a solution, so do not worry about it. The second kind has no solution, so do not worry about it. Story 47. My psychologist always says that when you're having a crisis, it feels like your body is on fire. So what do you do when you're on fire? You stop, drop, and roll. The same goes for your mind. You stop, think, and act. Story 48. I am not a spiritual person, but something I heard recently resonated with me. The road to heaven feels like hell, and the road to hell feels like heaven. Story 49. The best advice I received as a student trying to figure out my career was, find out what problems you want to have in your life. I didn't want chemistry problems. I wanted visual design challenges. I started looking at problem solving as an opportunity and built a successful career doing what I love, solving these types of problems rather than others. No job is easy and perfect. There are always challenges to manage. You need to know which ones to focus on. Then all the bad days become manageable, and the good days feel great. Story 50. A bit vulgar, but it puts a lot of things into perspective. You can only manage with what you have. I will do my best and not worry about what I cannot influence. It is what it is. Story 51. Avoid engaging in intimate relationships with people in your own neighborhood. Consider going to another town where they do not know your residence. This can help you avoid complications. I married the girl who lived next door. Story 52. You can't say the wrong thing to the right person. This has mostly applied to me when I'm talking to a new friend or a potential romantic partner. I often overthink whether what I'm saying is weird or stupid, but I remember this. Story 53. Fundamentally, the only person you have to answer to is yourself. Everything else is just a societal construct. Story 54. Not every experience will be remarkable. This was during a discussion about self-employment. Good jobs and bad jobs go hand in hand, but this principle also applies to life in general. Story 55. If you want to challenge a person's idea, ask it as a question. This gives you an opportunity if they know something you did not. Story 56. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so you can listen twice as much as you talk. That one came from one of my first mentors when I was young in the electrical trade. If you can't get out of it, get into it. My dad. Story 57. My dad was in the military and passed down some wisdom he learned from his master sergeant. I had just hit puberty, and my dad said, "Keep your pecker in your pants." At the time, I was mortified, but I was certainly careful with birth control methods when I became sexually active. Story 58. I can be negative simply because everyone and everything around me is, but I choose to be positive because it feels much better. This perspective changed my outlook on life and helped me overcome depression. I previously believed I couldn't be happy, but I realized that I had been choosing to be unhappy all the time. I began to focus on positivity and started to feel happier with myself, even in what I perceived as a powerless position. The person I spoke with was in a similar situation but always maintained a positive attitude, which I found hard to comprehend. Story 59. Do not assume malice when ignorance will just as easily explain things. You can do everything right and still fail. Keep trying until it works. Story 60. I was working as a temporary manager at a large aerospace company and found little support from other managers in learning the job. While discussing the challenges with another manager, he told me, "Don't trust anyone, not even me." After reflecting on his statement, my perspective on the job changed and it made much more sense. I was happy to return to my regular duties after my 6-month tenure. Story 61. Don't worry about tomorrow, as it will bring its own problems in due time. Don't compare yourself to others. Story 62. The 20% more than what your boss earns per year is not worth having a job with 80% more responsibility. Story 63. No brains, no headache. If you are early, then you are on time. If you are just in time, then you are late. If you are late, then you are fired. Story 64. If you have access to television right now, tune in and listen to Trump. He is weaving incoherent and disconnected stories, repeating old grievances, and exaggerating his greatness. Story 65. There is always someone who can do everything you cannot do, but you are the only one who can do everything you can do. Story 66. You don't have to take every shot. You don't have to hit every shot. What matters is the size of the shot. Story 67. My grandfather once told me, "I don't think you need to panic like this. An emergency, a real emergency, requires a trip to the hospital or the police station. Everything else is just an inconvenience." Story 68. Never believe the things you tell yourself when you are sad. Everyone has the right to change their minds at any time. Story 69. If you are comfortable and not struggling, vote for individuals who will help improve the lives of those who are struggling. Story 70. If you are capable of landing a job at a top tech company, you will have a higher chance of career success running your own business. Renting is a financially smarter move than buying given the current mortgage interest rates. For a Chinese person, living in the United States would open your eyes to a completely different world. For a Westerner, living in Greater China would do the same. Do not associate with religious fanatics. Good software is worth paying for. Car insurance is more expensive for young drivers for the same reason that joining a Greek organization is more beneficial for a non-traditional graduate student than for a young undergraduate. Story 71. Why do you let him treat you like this? I'm 20 years old, and my ex was being disrespectful. His mother said this to me. He woke me up. I have worth too. She adored me, but she understood her son was being immature. She gave me the push I needed. Story 72. Listen to advice given freely, thank people for their attention, and then decide if that advice is right for you. Story 73. When I was about 15, I answered an advertisement in a local paper about an elderly quadriplegic man needing assistance with private care. I worked for him for the next 5 or 6 years. Fred was in a car accident when he was in college in 1954, which broke his neck and severed his spine, leaving him paralyzed from the neck down. He said he had 2 options: sit under the oak tree on his family farm and wait for death, or make something of himself. He became a state legislator, inventor, and advocate for the disabled. He shared a story about going back to school after the accident and how he was struggling. One of his professors told him, "The only measure of a man that matters is from the eyes up." That still resonates with me after all these years. The hardships he faced, the struggles he endured, and the unbridled success he achieved despite it all. I love you, Fred. Rest in peace, my friend. I miss you. To add, thank you for all the great comments. He was an amazing person. He took me and a friend to Washington, D.C., arranged a meeting with the president of a college for my graduation from high school, and took me to my first collegiate football game at his alma mater. He taught me a lot about politics. We used to watch Crossfire on cable news, and I learned a great deal from him. I was blessed to be his friend. To answer a few questions, he had a full head of thick, if not silver, hair until the day he died. The work wasn't that technical. I transferred him in a Hoyer to a rolling shower chair, assisted him with the commode, helped with hygiene and showering, and transferred him to bed before leaving. Fred had been disabled for over 4 decades. In his experience, younger individuals could commit to part-time jobs, which paid little money between the hours of 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. I think I was paid about $70 a week while working 5 days a week. Not many older individuals would take that job. He understood the creepy old guy seeking young help vibe and invited my parents over before I started working to show that things were legitimate. Story 74. If you don't like being somewhere, leave. Don't force yourself to stay there. Ironically, this is advice I once gave to someone else, and they reminded me of it. Story 75. Don't be afraid to say yes. People don't really care about you, your time, life, or whatever you put yourself into because you said yes. Story 76. It does not make you a bad person to struggle with mental health and have difficulty with daily tasks. You would not judge someone with a broken leg if it was challenging or impossible for them to walk up the stairs in a building. So be kind to yourself when things feel overwhelming, and do not compare yourself to those who are currently healthy. It is completely natural to need healing and support to get back on your feet. Story 77. There is no shame in admitting when you do not know something or when you need help. Story 78. Don't be foolish. Whenever I am about to do something, I ask myself if a fool would do that. If they would, I refrain from doing that thing. Story 79. If you go anywhere new, such as work or school, do not make friends with the first people who approach you for no reason. Story 80. To just let things happen. The moment we realize we only control a small part of what happens to us in life, the easier things become. Life is harder when you feel the need to control everything. In reality, we have much less control than we realize, and we should focus on the things we can control. Story 81. Become the person you would want to hire, date, or be friends with. Be the best version of what you admire. Story 82. Drop a square of toilet paper in the bowl before you use the restroom, so the toilet water doesn't splash. Story 83. People can be foolish, my dad. I thought he was just being difficult because he often was, but as I grow older, I realize he was right. I need to keep my idealism in check. I cannot let disappointment in others affect me. I must look after myself. By doing these things, I can strive to make a positive impact. Story 84. If what you are saying about yourself was said about your best friend or sibling, would it upset you? Then stop. You are your hardest critic, and you need to stop being so hard on yourself so you can truly live. Story 85. Don't take financial advice from those who are struggling, said a wealthy friend after I explained why I didn't have a credit card and wasn't investing, which were both instructions from my financially constrained parents. Learning to manage a credit card took some self-control, but I am much better off now. Story 86. Lower the expectations you have of yourself. You will worry less and take more action. Story 87. If it is between you and the ground, buy the best available. Shoes, tires, and mattress. Just spend the money. Story 88. Be the change you want to see in the world. There is no justice in this world unless you make it. I try to follow these principles. Story 89. You cannot control what others think about you. Some people may not understand or appreciate you, but that is their loss. Story 90. Forget what the knowledge base tells you to do. Trust your instincts and lean into them. It may seem like a recipe for disaster, but it really helped me realize that I could feel my way around a problem. Story 91. Stay away from women. It wasn't directed at me, but was about how to be successful in anything. Nick Diaz. Story 92. An old man once told me, if you want to be rich, follow these 3 rules. Never get married, never have children, and always pay your bills on time. I had already gotten married, had children, and bills were tough. He went on to say, if you want to be wealthy, hold on to a good woman, raise decent adults, and never live beyond your means. Story 93. Focus your energy on things that are within your control. Do not try to control things that are outside of your control. Story 94. Thoughts are not facts, my therapist said. If you're out and about and see a public restroom, always use it, my mother advised. Story 95. Mr. Vosmanspel. Maybe you should consider changing your holiday this year from the United States to Canada. It is brilliant advice and it will be acted upon. Story 96. When I was in prison, I learned to be nice to people. Being a cheater is unnecessary, and there's no reason to attract attention to yourself by being rude. Story 97. Don't listen to anyone's advice. This was about the varying degrees of accuracy and experience in the advice people share. Ultimately, this helped me. Instead of trying to meet others' expectations for my job, I focused on doing my job well, and good things followed. Story 98. Only take advice from those who are living the life you aspire to or are in a position you intend to reach. Do not take relationship advice from friends who are chronically single, for example. Story 99. The customer is usually wrong, but it is not your money, so it is not really a hill worth dying on. This was shared by an old supervisor of mine when I was in my early 20s at a call center. Story 100. My dad told me in 2021, when I was nervous because I missed the national math test, that I shouldn't worry too much. He said, don't worry too much. It won't matter in 20 years anyway. This message, not to care too much about anything because it won't matter in the long run, has stuck with me until now. Story 101. Never attribute to malice what can be attributed to incompetence. This philosophical adage is known as Hanlon's razor. Story 102. When people show you who they are, believe them. I heard this quote when I had just turned 11 years old. I think my mom, dad, and sister would have done significantly worse damage to me, beyond developing borderline personality disorder and dissociative identity disorder, if I had not heard and listened to this advice. Story 103. I had a colleague who never quite got his quotes about giving advice correct. However, even though he misquoted them, he found a way to express the ideas that made sense. The one I remember the most is, when you come to the bridge, cross it. Story 104. Always wear sweatpants to a strip club. This was advice given to me when I was about 15 years old by an older chef. I really didn't want to become that guy. Story 105. The best way to take care of other people is to take care of yourself. There is a lot of truth in that. First, if you are successful at it, you prevent yourself from being a burden on others. Second, it teaches you how to care for others. Story 106. Start saving and investing early so that compound interest can accumulate and provide for you in your later years. It is the best advice I ever received. I did not actually follow that advice, and now I find myself old and poor. Nevertheless, it remains sound guidance. Story 107. I had knee surgery with a nerve block in my leg. I felt confident about how it didn't hurt while my doctor checked on me in recovery. He said it was due to the nerve block and that when I took my first dose of Percocet after they released me, I should probably double it. I didn't listen and now I regret it. Story 108. If you're ever too drunk to drive, just blow 2 lines of cocaine and you're good to go. Oh wait, I thought you said the worst advice. Sorry. Story 109. Not worrying about what others say, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone, sometimes leads us to stop doing what we truly enjoy because of concerns about their opinions. Story 110. Compounding interest. Start a dividend reinvestment plan on any stock dividends and compound that. Let savings grow in a high annual percentage yield account. Story 111. Nothing in life is as important as you think. The act of thinking about something exaggerates its importance. Story 112. If you give them enough rope, they will hang themselves. When dealing with difficult people, especially in the workplace, I use this philosophy frequently, particularly with those who seek attention. Story 113. A waiter at a Chinese restaurant told me their sister was an artist. But when art became her job, it stopped being a joy and started becoming a chore. Sadly, I didn't listen to them at the time and rediscovered that decades later on my own. Story 114. Most people spend a lot of time and money on their hobbies. You should find a hobby that generates income for you. Story 115. There are many attractive women in the world, but not all of them bring you lasagna at work. Most of them just cheat on you. Do not date women with emotional baggage. They are not worth the drama. Story 116. You are not the main character in everyone's play. Sometimes you are an extra. Sometimes you didn't even make the cut. Story 117. Treat your days in college like you would a job. Get up and start your day around 8 a.m. and end it around 5 p.m. If you do not have a class at 8 a.m., rise early to do homework, study, or review. Follow the same routine during other times of the day when you do not have class. Sometimes you may need to put in extra hours by studying at night for a test. But if you follow the schedule, most tasks will be taken care of, allowing you the freedom to do what you want after 5 p.m. without any issues. Additionally, if you are living in a dorm for the first time, consider getting a box fan to help drown out the noise while you sleep. Story 118. Pay yourself first. Set up automatic health savings account, retirement, and savings deposits, and never think about them. Story 119. The side dish is tastier when you eat it with the main dish. I never had any issues eating my greens growing up because I followed my uncle's advice to put them on top of the meat. They taste better when mixed together. Story 120. No doesn't need justification. When someone asks, can you understand? No is enough. No, I'm sorry I can't. Is excessive. Also, it's okay to quit. It's okay to prioritize yourself and leave that job, relationship, etc. Story 121. The student said, I am so discouraged. What should I do? The teacher replied, encourage others. It may seem surprising, but cheering for someone, telling them they did a good job, or even wishing them a good day can lift my spirits. Story 122. If someone is trying to give you something, it is acceptable to deny a few times. However, after they insist 3 times, you should accept it. This approach avoids any awkwardness and allows the person to feel good about their gesture. They are usually not giving it to you because they consider themselves superior. They simply want to do something kind. Story 123. Always bet on yourself. You can do more than you are willing to admit, and you will always be the best investment you can ever make. Believe in yourself. Do not be afraid to take on challenges that will test you, but deep down you know you can overcome them. A few examples include 1. Spending money on a course to learn a new skill. 2. Purchasing tools to enable you to learn a new trade. 3. Attending school. 4. Taking on more responsibility at work. 5. Starting a small business. Story 124. Nothing worthwhile comes easy. It's what my father said to me when I left for basic training. It has certainly helped me find where I am today. Story 125. Do you enjoy spending time with people who are consistently unhappy? No? Well, why would anyone want to spend time with you then? This led to a significant shift in mindset. Story 126. From my father, who passed away when he was 41 years old. Never bring a knife to a gunfight. And my favorite, use your head for something other than a hat rack. I miss you, Dad. Story 127. Don't get upset over minor issues. Nobody cares, and it wastes time and energy that you could be using for something productive. Story 128. Society teaches us that having feelings and crying is not wrong. Grief is a natural part of life. There is such a thing as good grief, just ask Charlie Brown. Story 129. Who cares if people don't like what you like or don't listen to what you listen to? It's for your enjoyment, not theirs. Since then, I stopped caring if people like the music I listen to or the shows I watch. Story 130. The best piece of advice that stuck with me was when I moved for a promotion. Someone in leadership told me, you will spend 3 years cleaning up the last person's mess, and then 3 years making your own. After that period, you will actually start understanding the job. Story 131. If you wouldn't want someone else to do it, do not do it yourself. It is a simple principle, but it has helped me change many habits for the better. Story 132. Explore the concept of no. When you ask something of someone and they say no, it's easy to believe that they are rejecting the entire request. Often, it's one aspect of the request that has caused the negative response. So, ask, what part of my request doesn't work for you? The outcome of this discussion may still be the same, but often a compromise can be reached that might not have been obvious initially. Story 133. You don't have to attend every fight you're invited to. My mom once said, arguments rarely accomplish anything. Story 134. Every time you think about something negative that might occur, you experience the associated trauma each time. However, that situation typically does not take place. Story 135. Do the next right thing, said a 9th grade avid teacher. Without her influence, I don't think I would have turned out as successful as I am now. Story 136. When I worked as a cold caller, an older man gave me sage advice. Stop this job and have lots of fun. I hope he is still enjoying life. Story 137. When you need to be brave in situations, just pretend. Pretending to be brave is still a form of bravery. I am an introvert, and this is my best mental strategy. Story 138. If you want to know what someone will do today and tomorrow, pay attention to what they did yesterday. Story 139. Always be true to yourself and disregard what anyone says or thinks about you. This advice was given to me a long time ago by someone very close to me, and it is something I have adopted as my own and try to share with others whenever I can. Story 140. From my mom. Don't burn a bridge. 40 years later, it's the best advice I've ever received, and it has served me well. Story 141. I have severe mental disabilities and a neglectful mother. My room and bathroom were a disaster. I'm not talking about the typical few dirty clothes and clutter. I'm talking about piles of dirty clothing, garbage, old food, and other items that didn't need to be filling my rooms. The rest of my apartment is a mess as my mother contributes to it as well. I'm currently 18 and a senior in high school. One of my teachers, whom I'm pretty close with, told me this: worry about what you can control. Since being told that, I've kept my room and bathroom clean. It's not perfect, and I still need to work on my bad habits. But if I focus on myself rather than the negative influences around me, I won't hold myself back from progressing into a functioning adult. Story 142. If you hesitate, don't do it. It sounds better in my own language, but that's the translation. My dad always says this, and so far it works. Story 143. Don't ever, for any reason, do anything to anyone, no matter what, where, who you are with, or where you are going or have been. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.